Not really. I mean, I did towards the end of the journey. I realized, look back at my journals. I thought, there could be a book here. We should maybe start writing a book. And I did. When I got home, I started, as I said, I started writing a book. And then one guy came in, a friend came in one day with this book called Jupiter's Travels, written by a guy called Ted Simon. He'd written around the world for 4 years, and he was 45 years old. He was Sunday Times journalist, so he was an expert writer. And
Hmm.
I thought, looked at this, and I thought, well, I can never compete with that. So I threw my journals in the drawer and forgot about the photographs and forgot about everything. It was only really, as I say, until 4 or 5 years ago, realized, well, what he experienced was maybe been down the same roads that I was on, but I was 21, he was 45. He'd loads of money, I was living on a shoestring. So it was a completely different experience down the same areas. Um, and certainly, that's the book I wrote in the end was completely different to his. As I said, it was more of a coming of age, learning about myself, whereas he's your middle age, you've been there, done there, done that.
Listen to the vibes.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Listen to the Vibes. And I'm very honored to have Mr. Chris Donaldson here. And we're going to learn all about his journey and about his book, Going the Wrong Way. So before we kick everything off, Chris, tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Hi, Cal, it's great to be here too. Thanks. Yeah, I'm what 60 odd, 60 on a bit, mid 60s from Belfast, Northern Ireland. I was brought up in the Troubles, as we called it. Basically, it was like a low class civil war in the 70s and 80s. I was a teenage, went to school in the middle of Belfast in the 70s, which was a dodgy enough place to be, even compared to America. There's bombs going off, bullets flying a fair bit. Though I never got too caught up in it myself. At an early age, I decided I want to get out, go to Australia. So bought a motorbike and for years planned to drive across Europe, across Asia, and then fly to Australia or ship to Australia from India. So I left '79 and my Moto Guzzi Le Mans, an Italian motorbike, and I got as far as London from Belfast, which is about 400 miles. And then the Ayatollah Khomeini decided to take over the American embassy in Tehran, and the Islamic Revolution kicked off. So that was about the end of the trip east. So only place I could go was south because it was coming into winter. So I headed to South Africa, went through the Middle East, drove the bike across the Sahara, down through Africa. Got a job in a sailing yacht coming back to Europe, flew over to the States, got the bike shipped to the States and drove around up to Canada, across Canada, down through the east side. Stopped in North Carolina for a while, then through Texas and through Mexico and into South America. It's about a year and a half later. By this stage, money was tight. The bike was falling apart. I got sick and ended up broken in Argentina in 1981. So it was a bit of an epic voyage. But I started writing a book about it afterwards, and then another guy put me at the post and wrote a book about riding around the world in a motorbike. So I gave up my journals, just put them away and forgot about them for 40 years. And then about 3 years ago, I decided to publish a book. And it's for somebody who's never written anything but a check for many years. It's turned out to be a bestseller on Amazon. It's gone really well. So 2 years ago, one of my mates said to me, well, you never actually got to Australia. Why not give it another go? So I was 63 then. I suppose I was 21 when I first set off the first time. So I decided, well, if I'm going to be the same guy, I may as well use the same motorbike. So I got my old Moto Guzzi out of the garage and got her fixed up. It's now 44 years old. And so we set off to Australia. Still got a job and got a family, so could just disappear for a year and a half anymore. So we did it in 2 week stages. We'd ride for 2 weeks, come home, leave the bikes, come home for 2 weeks, for 2 months, and then go out again. So it got held up a bit with COVID and various other misdemeanors. My buddy decided to give up halfway. Well, just as we got to Israel, in fact, he came home. which left me in a bit of a quandary because it was his idea to go in the first place, and then he gave up. So I ended up going on my own through Greece, Turkey, Iran, through Pakistan to India, Nepal, and finally got to Australia in March there. So it only took, I think it's probably the longest half circumnavigation of the world. It took me 43 years to get from Belfast to Australia. So
Wow.
it's a bit of an epic. It was great to finally get there. I think if I got there when I was 21, I probably would have stayed, got a job, and who knows what would have happened. It's just one of those things in life. You wonder, something outside of your control can change your whole world, and you end up going in a completely different direction again, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Man, you mentioned the Ayatollah. I remember when they had taken the hostages there in Iran. Remember that?
Yeah. That was the same time. I was actually traveling through the Middle East at that time, so it was fairly tense because the whole area was all up in arms, but very nervous about the whole situation. It was in Israel. Tried to get out of Israel into Egypt, and they wouldn't let us across the border. So I had to ship back to Cyprus, and I went to Syria, which was not much better than it is now. It's very dodgy. Lots of armed militia running around through Jordan, and got to Egypt that way. So it was a very roundabout way to get to Egypt. Another instance of going the wrong way. And it's sort of it's quite a good title for the book, obviously, because I left for Australia and ended up in Argentina. You can't get much further wrong than that. But I've realized through my life that I have gone the wrong way various times from choice, because I felt that rather than going the normal route, you can have more fun going taking a different route, taking a more difficult route, taking a less traveled, as they say, the sort of well-frequented term, which people love to use. But actually going the wrong route is wrong. You're going to have a hard time. You're going to maybe fail. You maybe get hurt or injured, whatever. But you'll get much more out of it. You know, it's makes setting yourself challenges and getting over obstacles. It makes a trip worthwhile. Yeah, it's funny. And I think it was about halfway down Africa, I realized that I didn't actually know where I was going, because it's not like today you've got internet. If you want to find out wherever anything is, you just Google it on your phone, you know. And those days you'd guidebooks, and the guidebook was probably out of date before you got it anyway. And my guidebooks were all for Persia and for India and for Pakistan, whereas I was going down Africa, so I really didn't know where I was going. But again, that was part of the beauty of the journey, because I was traveling for the sake of traveling rather than traveling for a destination. And 99% of the time you go traveling, you're going somewhere. You know, that's why you travel. You're going to work, you're going on holiday, you're going to a destination, and the travel is just a bit in between. Whereas I was actually not really interested where I was going. I didn't know anything about the place. It was just a point on the compass. I was actually just living day to day, enjoying the journey as an experience, which is a bit like life, really. You know, we're all going to the same destination, but you really got to enjoy the journey there. A lot of people spend their lives looking forward to what's going to happen, and they get next week, they get a pay rise, or they get a holiday, or something's going to happen that's in the horizon. They forget to enjoy themselves at the moment, you know.
Mm-hmm. And didn't you worry that maybe you'd get picked up and thrown in jail or something, and your family would never see you again?
No, I was 21. I was invincible at that stage. You can do anything when you're 21.
Superman.
That's why they fill armies up with 20-year-olds and 21-year-olds, because they think they're invincible. You don't think they never get hurt, never get injured. But yeah, it was certainly times in Africa was especially challenging, crossing the desert, going through Sudan. It's in the news now. Obviously, 40 years ago, it wasn't much better. The south of Sudan was in trouble then. There's various wars going on in Africa. Uganda just got rid of Idi Amin. You remember him?
Oh yeah, I remember him.
He fed all his politicians to crocodiles, which is probably about the only good thing he did.
Yeah, wasn't he known as a cannibal as well?
Yeah, he used to eat them as well. So he was still around the countryside somewhere. They didn't know where he was, but the Tanzanian army had just kicked them out. The trouble was they hadn't been paid for 2 months, so they were pretty difficult characters as well. So yeah, I ducked and dived a few civil wars. I got through Rhodesia just after independence, just after they got home rule or independent rule. It turned into Zimbabwe. South Africa had apartheid going on, and South America was in Colombia in 1980, which was just when Mr. Escobar was starting to shoot it to the stuff, you know.
Yep.
But yeah, it's funny when you it was very interesting. Basically, I was doing the same journey effectively that I did 43 years ago at the age of 64 to 21 on the same motorbike. Comparing how I felt about things like that now, and certainly I'd be much more careful what I would do now compared to when I was 21, you know. Although some would say not that clever, not that careful.
I'm nervous just going into the city. I couldn't imagine going around all those different countries.
Well, everybody's the unknown is part of the fear, I suppose. I mean, I remember South Africa. We were scared stiff of going to South Africa with apartheid and all the rules and regulations and the police presence and the troubles, the riots. Whereas I would got to South Africa and guys were saying to me, "You're from Belfast, so that must be really scary." And I'm going, "What? It's nothing compared to this place, you know." So it's part of fear of the unknown, I suppose. A lot of it, isn't it?
Well, then you have that sense of accomplishment every time you go through a different country. I mean, look what you did, and you made it out alive.
Yeah, that's quite impressive, really. I suppose it's when you think about it, I'm quite impressed by that sometimes myself. I did some very stupid things, there's no doubt about that. But no, I mean, it's in the same way. Things aren't as bad as places. Your fear sometimes takes over your head, but other places like Iran was the place that stopped me going to Australia the first time. When I actually got there this time, I was able to drive up to the American embassy in Tehran. It's still there. It's a museum now. But the people in Iran were fantastic. They were the friendliest people I've met on all my journeys, I think. Anytime you stopped asked them for directions, they would get in their car and drive you where you wanted to go.
Wow.
You know, they would want to put you up in their house. They would, a couple of times they stopped for petrol, filled up, and they wouldn't take any money. They said, "Go and enjoy our countryside, and, you know, have a good time," you know. So it's we get preconceived ideas of what places are going to be like, and we get brain freeze nearly. And then very often they're the places that they're the most friendly.
Yeah, I don't think it's so much the people that I worry about as I worry about the government. Because you don't know what the local police are like, or you know what the government's going to do to you. Most folks are just friendly folks that want to get along.
Yeah, and certainly in Iran too, the police were, you know, were a worry, and there would be checkpoints, regular checkpoints around the place. But
Yeah.
one of the nice things about a motorbike is everybody loves motorbikes, so they're interested in motorbikes, and armies and police are full of young kids, young guys, and they all love motorbikes. So it's a stop you, and so you usually talk them into being a reasonable, sort of make out you're a reasonable guy, and they'll break down the barrier a bit. Next thing you know, you're having a cup of tea with them, sitting enjoying talk. One stage in Iran, I was stopped at the side of the road, and a guy pulled up in a tank, a truck with a tank in the back of it. He started asking me about the bike, you know, and I said, "So we can't really, you know, so bikers do that sort of thing. They sort of kick the tires and ask you how fast it goes and so on. You can't really do that with a guy in a tank." So,
Right.
he took a selfie, he took pictures of me, and I sort of took a picture of him beside us, and then drove off. And I realized I'm driving through Iran with pictures of an army tank in my phone. If I get stopped with that, I'm going to be in serious trouble. So I managed to delete it. I thought I deleted it, of course, but it was still in the phone, so I was able to retrieve it when I got home. But silly things like that can get you into trouble, certainly, you know.
Yeah. So you took a lot of pictures though when you were younger, right?
Yeah, yeah. Well, a lot in those days was probably 500 over the year and a half. Whereas now, of course, you again, it's so easy with your phone. You just tap away and you take thousands of pictures. Try and talk to my daughter, and young kids now are getting these, going back to the old films, just to give you the old fashion quality of camera. It's getting quite popular again. And of course, I got a daughter the old camera with 24 film in it, and she's zapping away. So hang on a minute, that's about 30 quid worth of film you used up there. You can't just delete them. But yeah, there's a lot of things have changed. Technology's changed. It's one of the biggest changes. People are the same, but the internet's made a huge difference in the world in the last 40 years.
I think Polaroids are coming back.
Yeah, they're quite trendy too.
Yeah,
like retro's trendy.
Yeah, I like the fact that record albums are coming back.
Yeah, until you have to keep changing it.
Yeah, how many different versions of the White Album have you gotten over the years?
No, it is strange. People, you get used to the modern technology. Like, I mean, Google Maps. You don't need maps anymore. You just have your phone. If your phone, you pick a hotel in front where you're going to find out where place to eat is, whatever you need to know, you've got it there. Whereas when I drove into Uganda, it actually drove off the edge of my map. I didn't have a map for further south. So luckily I met a guy coming up north, so we swapped maps. I got his map for South Africa and he got mine for North Africa. Otherwise I didn't know, literally driving off the edge of the world, which is probably a good thing at the time, because not knowing where I was going was actually, if I'd known where I was going, I probably wouldn't have gone there.
Did you happen, I'm sorry, but did you happen to run into anybody else from Ireland while you were out there?
Yeah, ran into a few people. One of the stories, when I got to South Africa, I couldn't get a job there. Couldn't get out. I thought it was going to be the end of the journey. We managed to get there's a sailing yacht came in on a yacht race, and there's an Irish guy on board. He hurt his leg when he was on shore. So I got his spot in the boat, got a free ride back to Europe, and the shipping company shipped me back to the States. So it was quite a opportune moment. But the guy, he was from Ireland and he was going back to Belfast. And remarkably, 3 months later, I actually bumped into him in the street in Belfast, or in Donegal, just the other side of Belfast. I thought, I know you. I saw you in South Africa 3 months ago. And he said, hey, God, cool, Chris, how you doing? I'm going to get in touch with you. And we ended up, he worked with the same company for 6 months. He stayed. He was an Australian guy with Irish parents, and he came back. So there's some funny sort of coincidences like that happened along the way.
Yeah, that's actually kind of cool. And the shipping company, they just swapped out one Irishman for another, huh?
So yeah, and they said to me, I said, well, what am I going to do with my motorbike? And he says, well, we'll send it anywhere in the world. I said, well, where we're going to go. So basically looked at the map. I said, well, what do you got in America? And he says, Los Angeles. I'll be there in 3 months. I said, perfect. So I picked it up in 3 months. So some things just fall in your place. That's a funny thing. Some things would fall in your place. All the things are disaster. Like I went to Israel, couldn't get out. The border with Egypt was closed. Border with Jordan was closed. And then last year when we went back in the follow-up, went through Israel again. It was pretty cool. I met one of the guys I stayed with 40 years ago. I haven't spoken to him since. So it was pretty weird meeting somebody you haven't met for 40 years and asking them, well, how's your life been? Basically, your working life's pretty much over. How do you get on and find out what you've been doing? It was a great feeling. I met a few old guys I got. Having a book, writing the book has made quite a change to my life, in fact, because I've been out of motorcycling for 10 or 20 years, really. The bike was just sitting in the garage. But the book has taken off so well. I had old friends that I haven't seen for 40 years writing to me, emailing me, wanting to meet up. So I met a couple of guys that I used to hang around with. In fact, one of the guys I stayed with in Australia finally, there was a guy I went off in 1978 on a bike trip around Europe with. And last month we were able to drive around Brisbane together, and he still got his motorbike and I got mine. So it was pretty cool too.
Was your family ready to lock you up? They think you was crazy?
Pretty much. No, it's been, I mean, the first trip was, I was 21. It was like a coming of age road trip. I learned a lot of things about myself, learned how to motivate myself, how to get through things if you want to. Generally, you may have friends, you may be married, you may have a family, but most times if you're in trouble, you have to get out of it on your own. You get yourself to blame and to be responsible for yourself. So I learned how to look after myself that way. And this journey is, I guess it's at the other end of the scale, not the coming of age story, it's a coming of old age story. Now sort of looking at retirement and seeing what I can do with myself instead of, I've always been fearful of retirement, sitting in the garden, watching the grass grow and playing golf once a week, and see a lot of people not having much fun. So it was nice to be able to prove that I can still do what I did when I was 21.
But yeah, that sense of accomplishment, when most people, their sense of accomplishment is just getting to retirement age. I've been to Mexico, and that's probably the longest journey I've ever taken, other than going across the United States. I'd love to get out and see other countries. And by the way, how many cuss words did you learn along the way?
I just always use the same ones.
I mean, in different languages.
The Irish language has a great vocabulary for cuss words. I didn't have to stray into any Spanish or the other ones. We'll use plenty. But no, it was a great trip, and I suppose, let's say, writing a book. Yeah, I managed to finish school, but I was always at the bottom of the class in English and bottom of the class in most things. I was never very academic. My old English teachers would be pretty shocked to find I'd written a book. Did a couple of online courses and did a bit of studying to learn how you actually go around writing a book. But definitely, I say everybody's got a book in them. I would say if I can write a book that turns out to be a bestseller, anybody can. And it doesn't have to be about writing it. Everybody's got their own journey that they're making. Everybody's got a unique story, But getting it published, well, self-publishing again is another experience, learning how to do that. Again, one of the wonderful things about technology is 40 years ago it was much more difficult. You had to go to a publisher, you had to be a known writer. Really, it was very hard to break in to get a book published, whereas now anybody can get on Amazon and publish a book anywhere in the world. It's quite incredible. It changes.
Yeah. And then if you wanted to, you can actually write your book right there on your phone.
Yeah.
While you're on your journey. It's amazing how technology has brought us that far. Who would ever thought one day you'd hold a computer in your palm of your hand,
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, it says as much computing power in an iPhone as there is in all of the computers that sent the man into the moon 50 years ago,
Mm.
So it is quite, and what's happening now with AI is going to be the next generation, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm a little scared of that myself. I don't want to mess with it.
Well, I was reading the other day that we've been using it for a long time. I couldn't have written a book without spell checker.
Yeah, that's true.
Which is it's artificial intelligence as well, So we have been using it even without knowing it.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to spell duck. Well, you learned quite a bit on that journey, because I was watching the video that you made of your little introduction, and you'd gotten stuck in the sand and learned a little trick how to get out of it.
Yeah, well, 40 odd years ago, motorcycles were different. The adventure type motorbikes hadn't been invented. The power stack car just started. I think the first one was in '79.
Mm-hmm.
That really started the sort of trend. People buying motorbikes which are made to go on or off road. My bike was a café racer roadster. Like, it was made for firing down motorways and showing off, not for cutting across deserts. So by the time I got across the desert, the front wheel was bent, the forks were, well, the shock absorbers were all shot. I don't know why that thing didn't blow up, but it was people now get fixated about having the right gear, the right motorbike, the right car for a particular form of transport. Like, nobody goes cycling without having Lycra gear on anymore, whereas nobody goes out on a motorbike without full sets of leathers and color coordinated helmets. Whereas in our day, we just did it with a pair of shoes and a pair of jeans. But the bike certainly suffered a bit, getting across the desert, going through dirt tracks through Africa. It had to be rebuilt a couple of times when I got back. But it's amazing. It was a 45-year-old bike, 45-year-old car would normally be in a museum. So it was a pretty impressive piece of machinery that I was able to actually do the trip to Australia 45 years after it was built.
Mm-hmm.
Like, between the two of us, with a combined age of 109. It was a bit scary.
Mm. And you rebuilt it before you left. How hard was it to get the parts for it?
Well, the nice thing about pre-technology stuff or older stuff is that something breaks down. If it was made in the 80s or 70s, you can take it apart. It's all pretty, you can see with your eye. Anybody with a bit of mechanical knowledge can take it apart and repair it, or get it repaired and fix it and get it back on the road again.
Mm-hmm.
I sort of learned how to do that on the way. But modern machines, first of all, you need a computer to plug into it to find out what's wrong with it.
Yeah.
And then whatever is wrong with it, you can't fix it because it's a solid state piece. It has to be replaced. People don't fix anything anymore. It's like your washing machine breaks, you throw it away and buy a new one.
Mm-hmm.
Something breaks in your car, the mechanics just take it out, throw it away and put a new piece in. Whereas with the older machines, you could actually see what was wrong and get it welded or get it repaired or rewired or whatever. So my friend, he left on a new Moto Guzzi, and there's one of the brake wires broke for the ABS, and he couldn't fix it because such a slight voltage difference would have stopped the brakes working. So he had to drive for 2,000 miles with all the lights flashing in his dashboard. Couldn't fix it until he got a new piece to replace it. Whereas my bike, you just got the screwdriver and rewired it. So there's advantages to the older stuff as well. So yeah, I mean, it's I suppose if anything, the first trip taught me was motivation, and I think traveling on your own teaches you a lot as well. When you're brought up with your family, your friends, your neighborhood, you're sort of fitting in with what's going on around you all the time.
Mm-hmm.
It was like traveling on my own because you could discover you can be yourself. You don't have to rely on anybody else. You don't have to listen to anybody else's point of view. You can really do what you like. So it's quite a special way to travel as well. There are hardships with it as well because you can get lonely, you can get stuck, you need somebody to help you. But generally, I think it also helps if you go into a bar on your own, you get talking to somebody. But if there's two of you going into a bar or restaurant, you're not going to meet anybody else because you're talking to each other. And very often, if you're traveling, you want to find out what the culture is, meet people, talk to people. It's much easier on your own as well.
Mm-hmm. Outside of the journey that you took, what's been like the biggest hurdle in your life?
Well, one of the I suppose one of the biggest hurdles has been in my life. I've been in business for 40 years. I've been in retail, I've been in IT, I've made mobile apps in Dubai for 10 years. I've been in fitness, been in property, and about 12 years ago during the banking crash, the banks took over all my property business. Basically made me bankrupt. So I spent the next 5 years or 6 years self-litigating against them because I couldn't afford a lawyer. So to learn how to stand up in court in front of a judge and talk to these guys when they've got an expert lawyer standing talking to you, knows all the law. You feel very insignificant and I don't know, severe lack of knowledge against these guys. But I was able to motivate myself to keep going and eventually got my properties back. I was able to sue them, get some money back off them as well. And I certainly
Nice.
know that if I hadn't learned how to motivate myself and condition the brain to be patient and to drive, don't take no for an answer. In the likes of the journey and made through Africa, if it hadn't been for those experiences, I wouldn't have been able to keep going against one of the biggest banks in the UK, get my properties back.
Wow.
I'd say that was probably my biggest hurdle to be able to cross. As well, I think it's your youth, what things happen to you when you're younger. What you learn carries you on for the rest of your life, you know. That was certainly one of the hardest times.
Did you ever think on your journey that you would inspire other people to follow their dreams?
Not really. I mean, I did towards the end of the journey. I realized, look back at my journals. I thought, there could be a book here. I should maybe start writing a book. And I did. When I got home, I started writing a book. And then one guy came home, a friend came in one day with this book called Jupiter's Travels, written by a guy called Ted Simon. He'd written around the world for 4 years, and he was 45 years old. He was Sunday Times journalist, so he was an expert writer. And I looked at this and I thought, well, I can never compete with that. So I threw my journals in the drawer and forgot about the photographs and forgot about everything. It was only really, as I say, until 4 or 5 years ago, I realized, well, what he experienced was maybe been down the same roads that I was on, but I was 21, he was 45. He'd loads of money, I was living on this shoestring. So we had a completely different experience down the same areas. And certainly, that's the book I wrote in the end was completely different to his. As I said, it was more of a coming of age, learning about myself, whereas you're middle aged, you've been done there, done that. But yeah, some of the reviews I've had have been awesome. One guy wrote to me, he's from hospital bed. His son was having repeated surgery for his back and a lot of pain, and he was able to tell me that reading my book to his son and telling him about the obstacles that I had to overcome was able to inspire his son to say, if he can do that, I can get well too. So he's actually wrote to thank me for writing a book. So it was quite awesome to have that experience. It's it's great, very touching for any author to get a good review, and quite insulting to get a bad review. So anybody gets don't give me a bad review, I'll cry. But yeah, no, I've had some tremendous feedback, and I'll say it's motorcycling world is very very sociable, and I've got friends all over the world now especially since the book was published, and meeting up with new guys from Italy to Australia. It's been tremendous. But one of the other reasons I wanted to challenge myself, I guess, too, is about 5 years ago I got diagnosed with Parkinson's.
Yeah, I read about that.
Which can obviously be very debilitating. So yeah, in a way, I wanted to challenge myself to do it before I wouldn't be able to do it. And ironically, I found luckily it was the opposite from yourself. I found that motorcycling actually helped me with the symptoms that you would have thought holding on to handlebars and bumping along roads would have been quite difficult, but actually it seemed to calm the muscles down, and concentrating on one thing, focusing on keeping yourself alive, maybe, was enough to help the symptoms of the disease. So it's actually surprisingly beneficial. No, I mean, I say I was doing the same thing as I was doing 40 years ago. 40 years ago, I think I could do 800 miles in a day, you know, I could ride all day and go out and party all night, you know, whereas now I go ride just sort of a third of that distance and I just want to go to bed with a hot cocoa and get a good night's sleep, a good shower, you know. But yeah, there's a few aches that I didn't have 40 years ago, certainly, but nothing as bad as what you got.
Hey,
But,
living on the edge for me is staying up to 10 o'clock.
I know the feeling. Yeah. But yeah, you do what you can do as long as you push yourself to your limits. And as you say, you don't want to. I don't think they say you never die. You never think, you never regret what you did. You just regret what you didn't do. You know.
Yeah, true.
But again, the problem was we wanted to go to Australia. It was going to take 3 months riding to get there. So what do? There's always a way, you know. We're able to say, okay, we'll drive for 2 weeks, leave the bikes in Athens, and then drove to Israel. We'll leave the bikes in Dubai. Then Pakistan. It was easy enough to find somewhere safe to leave them, and come back in 2 or 3 months' time. COVID was the other problem, of course. Going through countries just at the end of that, but it was an interesting time. Essentially, it nearly seems quite surreal what was going on 3 years ago already. You know, it's amazing how quickly we get used to the norm of COVID. Now we're used to post-COVID. It's all just a memory now. It's such a weird time.
Well, no, you say you have a 15-year-old, but do you think that you have motivated them to want to do something in life? I mean, I don't know what it might be, but
I think so. I think they're both very dedicated, passionate about what they do. One's in judo and one's in dancing, so they're both quite different, all different traits. But I don't think it matters what you do, as long as you do it with your whole heart and your whole passion. Do it the best you can, you know. Whether it's dancing or riding a motorbike, you get pleasure from doing something right and doing it well and succeeding in the challenge. Whether it's riding to Dallas or to whatever, or across the country or across the world, it's the sense of achievement that you push yourself to your limits and being able to succeed in doing what you set out to do.
Do you have a website?
Yeah, website's chrisdonaldson.world. But the best place to buy the book in the States probably is certainly on Amazon. It's on paperback. It's on audiobook and Kindle as well. So it's it's been a great experience. I'm just trying to write another book about the last trip I did as well, but not so many things went wrong on this trip because I got a bit wiser with my old age. Slightly. And they say, the best books when lots of things go, the best stories when things go wrong. Nobody wants to hear about stories when everything goes right.
I know what you mean.
Nobody wants to hear about Juliet getting married to Romeo and having lots of children and living happily ever after, Somebody has to die, somebody has to get sick, or somebody has to do something, But no, it's been a great the big things have been a great experience. And looking forward to the next challenge.
Oh, and what about your social media?
Yeah, I'm on Facebook, Chris Donaldson, and Going the Wrong Way. It's a page on Facebook, and on eBay. I'm on Instagram.
Thank you so much, man. I really appreciate you coming on. And when the next book comes out, let me know. Well, have you come back on and talk about it.
I'll certainly do that. And if I get to Austin, I'll give you a shout.
I also want to thank all of you out there. If you are new to the channel, well, please hit that subscribe button. I hope you'll come back. And for my regulars, you guys are awesome because you make it possible for me to do this. Till the next one, everyone, please take care. Be kind to one another. God bless and peace.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Listen to the Vibes. You can catch us on Buzzsprout or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts, and on YouTube. Follow us on Facebook at The Vibes Broadcast Network